Ano nga ba ang AMAPS? Ang AMAPS or Amateur Media Association of Philippine Scouts ay isang samahan ng mga aktibong kasapi ng kilusang scout sa Pilipinas na nagnanais maging isang tauhan ng media ngunit walang sapat na kakayahan, pagsasanay at kaalaman. Kami ay naglalayong magsanay at magturo ng tinatawag na responsible media practice sa mga kasapi nito at gamitin ang mga social media and video sharing platforms para mas mapakalat ang ideolohiya at aral ng scouting sa Pilipinas. Kasama rin sa paninindigan ng AMAPS ang pamumuhay sa matiwasay na paraan upang makamit ang Sustainable Development Goals ng United Nations. Nakapaloob rin sa AMAPS ang Pinoy Scout TV na isang online channel kung saan mapapanood ang mga scouting talk shows, vlogs, webinars na pinamumunuan ng mga AMAPS regular members. May ilang shows din naman na pinapatakbo ng mga AMAPS honorary members, bagamat ito ay hindi regular kagaya ng iba. Ang pandemya ay nag-uudyok ng malubhang kawalan ng pag-asa, ngunit hindi tayo mapipigilan ito. Nagsusumikap kaming magkaisa laban sa lahat ng mga pagsubok at hamon na dulot ng pandemyang ito. Kaming mga miyembro ng AMAPS ay inaanyayahan kayong lahat na sumali sa aming organisasyon upang mapalakas, mapatibay at mapayaman ang ating samahan. Kung ikaw ay may talento sa pagsusulat, pagsasaliksik, pag-uulat at husay sa pakikipagtalastasan, baka ikaw na ang aming hinahanap at dapat na mapabilang sa aming organisasyon. Sa inyong angking galing at talento, sa aming mga nabanggit na larangan, ikay magiging malaking tulong upang maisakatuparan ang aming misyon. Kung nais niyong mapabilang sa amin, i-message niyo kami sa aming Facebook page na Amateur Media Association of Philippine Scouts. Bukas ang aming page sa inyong aplikasyon at buong puso namin kayong tatanggapin. Muli, kami ang AMAPS, Media by the Scouts, for the Scouts. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat.
Ayan. Hello viewers! Welcome to another episode of Scouts for Sustainability. Again, this is Eagle Scout Winsharm M5 from Lipa City Council and I am
with Bianca Miasol Pades from Tarlac Councils, your host for tonight's show.
Now partner, before we introduce our guest, let's have a short recap of the discussion that we had last episode with Ate Pash. So, that was 2 weeks ago. So, for those who doesn't know, sa ating mga viewers, Ate Pash was a feminist and a LGBTQ rights advocate. And I must say, she is a leader and a literary type kind of person. And if I may ask, partner, what is the most notable part of the discussion that we had during that episode para sa'yo?
I think for me, Ate Patch casting was something na talagang tumatak sa isip ko na. Aside from creating a safe space for women and for the LGBT community, it's equally important na gumawa tayo ng environment na yung validation na isisik lamang ng mga babae at ng LGBTQ plus community ay manggagaling lamang sa sarili nila. Kasi if hindi sila mag-rely on anybody else, I must say na this world or this society will be a better place kasi they'll have the confidence that they will need whenever they pursue anything in life. So ikaw ba, partner?
Thank you for asking. Pero as for me, yung specific, there was a part in the interview na mention ni Ate Pash na how we are portrayed. We young ladies, we as women are portrayed in stories. And tumatak yun sa akin. Kasi looking back, in the stories, in fictional stories, we are always described as people who need someone to save us from, or for example, we need a Prince Charming to save us, or we need somebody na, you know, as a woman, we can stand up for ourselves. And that's a big thing. That's a big and a huge leap for us to understand na ayun nga, in this times we have to understand the power that we have as women. And as for me, I really enjoyed that interview. I learned a lot. For me lang talaga, favorite part ko talaga yun. Kasi talagang na-realize ko, oo nga, no? Bakit parang laging kailangan natin ng Prince Charming, ganon? Kailangan ng may magliligtas when I myself can stand up for my family, for other people, and such. No, no.
So, ayan,
So,
partner. Talagang parang naungkat yung childhood natin sa mga literary stories na napakinggan natin, mga na-story time sa atin. Kaya
that was
parang nostalgic
remarkable.
din in a way, no?
Kasi, oo nga pala, nabanggit din kasi niya, si Ate Pash kasi bukod sa siya ay advocate, she is also a masulat na tao. She's a literary type of person. So, I can somehow relate to her because I think ikaw din because you're both in journalism, no? And that was great.
So, before we introduce our guest for today,
Mhm.
syempre, tingnan muna natin how are our viewers sa Facebook. Are they doing well? Ganyan. Kamusta naman sila for the past 2 weeks? Let us know. We'll read your comments later. And if you have questions for our guest, feel free to drop them on the comment section. And ayun nga, if you're enjoying this show, send us stars. Baka naman. So,
Yes.
we're gonna wait
I
for your
love it.
stars. Ayan.
So, shall
So,
we introduce our guest na?
yes.
Please
So,
do the honor, my partner. I'm
So,
very
okay, our
excited.
guest for today is a human rights and environmental justice activist from Negros Occidental, a 2020 Amnesty International Outstanding Young Human Rights Defender nominee. He is among the youth who led and eventually won the campaign to overturn the 300 megawatt coal-fired power plant's proposal for the island that is recognized to be Southeast Asia's solar power capital. Under the Youth for Climate Hope coalition they co-founded years back, he and his colleagues continue to organize the youth, civil society, and non-government organizations, religious groups, and the academy through establishing the Negros Environment Watch, where he sits as a member of the Secretariat, currently steering campaigns for climate justice and the protection of Negros forests and the fisher folk affected by the black sand mining operations. Past working in communities and past policy and research for conservation. He is an incoming sociology sophomore at Silliman University and an information education and communications officer of a land and human rights NGO operating in Negros Occidental. So he is no other than Mr. Joshua Villalobos.
Good evening. Thank you so much for that introduction. And that's a very sweet introduction. And again, I'm very happy to join you guys tonight. Kahit na lubog yung lighting ko sa lighting ninyo. Kasi hinanap ko pa kanina yung ring light ko tapos hindi ko mahanap. Pero I'm very happy to join you guys. And thank you so much for inviting us, especially here from Negros, to share our stories of fighting for climate action and climate justice, because it is minsan yung mga stories from the regions are not very heard of kasi mas dominant yung mga nangyayari or yung mga stories from Manila or from the national capital region, but it's also very heartwarming for us to be invited and talk about our story and share what the youth have been doing here in response to our problem of the climate crisis.
Yeah, and by the looks of it, I think tonight's show will be remarkable again. So before
And we're
anything
very
else,
excited then to hear your stories later. So go, partner.
so yeah, Kuya, before anything else, we would like to ask, how are you currently doing amidst the pandemic?
Yeah, thank you so much for that question. So, this pandemic has halted a lot of things that we wanted to do, no? Siguro relate din kayo kung mga estudyante kayo. So, it is supposed to be my first year in a university. far from home. Unfortunately, dahil nga sa pandemic ay hindi tayo natuloy sa ating mga universities and we stayed at home. Pero at the same time, medyo nag-open din siya ng separate door for me because I was able to work in a land and human rights project supported by the European Union through their European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights. So, and that job is very close to my heart. So, masaya ako to join the team implementing that land and human rights project. So, the first days of the pandemic, I think for all of us is very, very difficult, especially on the mental health aspect of it. So, medyo naghirap tayo doon, but fortunately, we were able to survive a year of it, and we're now here. So, yun lang naman for me, and I think I'm coping up well, and siguro, I'm coping up well based on a personal assessment, pero the pandemic has altered, as I've said, the pandemic has altered a lot of things that we wanted to do, specifically physical activities that we really, really want to do as young people. Diyan tayo magaling to organize activities that we can come together and then
I agree.
show what do we really want. Pero dahil sa nangyari to, almost everything, if not everything, have moved virtually. So, kaya nandito din tayo ngayon. And kung hindi din siguro dahil sa dito, eh hindi din tayo magkakausap-usap. So, yan lang. How about you guys? Quick responses of how you've been doing?
As for me, I just graduated. I just graduated last week. Grade 12 was very stressful. Thank you for asking. But yeah, nairaos din. And of course, just as you said, it created lots of opportunities, and yun, it connected us more than ever in the social media platform. How about you, partner?
Same as you, partner. I'm doing great then actually. Pero let's commend naman the fact that nag-operate pa rin yung kanilang organization amidst this pandemic. And nakikita
That's
nga
right.
natin na continue pa rin yung mga ginagawa nilang mga projects, mga campaigns. So, heading on to our next question, paano niyo po ba ma-introduce yung sarili niyo? Like, aside po sa mga na-mention a while ago in terms of like your hobbies or your interest, yung mga ganyan po ba?
Siguro if I would introduce myself in a sentence, for example, I'm a queer environmental justice and human rights activist, siguro ganyan. So it's important as well that I included my gender kasi ano din pala ngayon, aside from Environment Month, it's also Pride Month. So we're celebrating a lot of celebrations in June, no? Last week, I think, nung June 8, nag-World Oceans Day din tayo. June 5, nag-World Environment Day. And then, of course, the entire of June. Then also, very near to me now that I work in a land and human rights NGO is the celebration of CARP, anniversary of the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. That's also in June. So a lot of things are happening in June. So yeah, if I introduce myself, maybe siguro ganyan. Para simple lang. 16 years old, charot. Pero sinabi ko, I stopped aging at 16. So, I'm 16 for
Forever
3
young.
years. Yeah.
Actually, I'm convinced naman, kuya, if you're going to say that you're 16.
Oo nga, minsan may disadvantages din yon na parang hindi sila naniniwala na 18 ka na or 19.
So,
Hindi
Lalo
ka
na sa malls
makakapasok sa mga
ngayon.
malls. Oo, hindi ka makakapasok sa mga malls.
Tatanungin nila sa malls, ilang
curious.
taon ka na?
Ayan nga.
Ayun, partner?
So, ilan taon ka na, kuya?
Ay, 16 for 3 years. So, 19.
Wait lang, napaisip ako doon.
Oo.
So, so you're 2 year older than us. Kuya talaga. So, I'm very curious, what are your hobbies outside this advocacy? Do you sing? Do you dance? Do you also watch K-dramas or animes?
Mhm. hobbies outside of this, I think is medyo tamad ako so hindi ako very physical na my hobbies are not very physical but there was a time especially early nung pandemic did nag-run ako minsan. I mean araw-araw din 'yon before. Ay nag tumatakbo and then siguro ngayon mas consider ko yung sarili ko mahirap man umamin pero parang addict ako sa TikTok kasi napakaganda talaga. I mean very time consuming yung talaga yung pag-scroll sa TikTok kahit nagso-scroll ka lang tapos hindi mo namamalayan na 2 oras ka na pala sa TikTok ganyan. So and then
Very
also
true.
'di ba totoo 'yon kasi alam naman natin na yung nakikita din natin sa For You page or um, things that we want to see kasi na-algorithm yon. So, alam na alam talaga ng TikTok kung ano yung gusto nating panoorin. Kaya, nagsistay din tayo. So, yun, Facebook, TikTok. So, basically, social media and then watching series as well if maraming time. Pero most of the time kasi wala na talaga. Ngayon ngang gabi this is my third meeting since 6 p.m. And then the last one will be at 10 later. So,
Oh, very packed
yun.
ang schedule. So, ito, Joshua, another question. So, as a co-founder of Youth for Climate Hope, please help us introduce the coalition and why their initiatives are connected with other work that you do in other affiliations.
Mhm. Yeah. So I think that's a very good question as well to start introducing where I came from. So the Coalition Youth for Climate Hope was founded in 2018. That's the verge of our campaign against the coal-fired power plant in Negros Occidental. And if you can remember, that's also the time na naging known si Greta Thunberg in the international level. And then while she is getting some media traction, we're also doing some work here in Negros Occidental, especially in opposing the coal-fired power plant, which we know na yung coal as a source of energy is one of the biggest contributor to the current greenhouse gases in our atmosphere. So the more reason for us to fight against it. And then aside from that, that's also the time, 2018 din, nung nag-release yung Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So that's the highest policy-making body of the United Nations when it comes to to discussion of climate change. They released a new report na we only have 12 years until we experience the reversible impacts. So that's the keywords, the reversible impacts of climate change. So that would be on 2030 and we're now in 2021. So that's 9 years na lang. So mas malaki yung rason for us to push for climate action and climate justice, especially here in the Philippines. So yung Youth for Climate Hope ay isa sang coalition ng organizations and individuals in Negros Occidental who are passionate about climate action and also who are willing to do work to pursue climate justice. So yung ginagawa ng Youth for Climate Hope ay awareness raising, especially sa issue ng climate change and then the issue of course the one of the pride of Negros Occidental which is renewable energy and then yung what are the negative impacts of coal and then especially to health and climate and then um, aside from that we also lobby policies to local government units no so our major na engagement siguro with the local government was with um, the provincial government of Negros Occidental. No, kaya nga tayo nanalo yung kabataan when Governor Marañon signed Executive Order 19-08. So that's the executive order declaring Negros Occidental as a coal-free province and a source of renewable energy. So we've lobbied that successfully. And then also nung time na yon may mga nangyayari ng climate strikes sa NCR but not as big as that. So that happened on March 6 where more than 2,000 youth, students and religious people and of course environmentalists um, rallied in front of the provincial capital, which forced the governor to sign the executive order. And then aside from that, syempre, isa sa mga um, tenets ng Youth for Climate Hope is to really have fun and build a fun community kasi that's how you make young people come together when you have fun, 'di ba? Kasi paano naman mapapalapit yung mga kabataan kung puro trabaho yung inaatupag natin, puro problema, puro ganyan. So that's we also value that one. And so in
Interesting.
youth yeah, sige, go ahead, Win. Sorry.
I'm just listening to you. It's very interesting on this organization. I hope I can join you someday. That's my inner thoughts.
Yeah, of course, syempre, or mas maganda din na mag-organize ng climate coalition dyan sa lugar ninyo or your organization because this is one of the pressing, this is one of, if not the pressing issue na kinakaharap ng generation natin. Kasi our generation will who have the intergenerational din kasi meron din konsepto ng intergenerational justice kasi for example our generation we have one of the least contributions sa climate change kasi ilang years pa lang naman tayo nabubuhay, but we will be the generation who will suffer the worst of its impacts kasi tanggapin man natin o hindi may mamamatay talaga yung tao. And so the older generation syempre mas mauuna sila. Pero peace sa mga older generation. Pero totoo naman yun, na mauuna talaga sila. So, kaya doon nga pumapasok din yung konsepto ng intergenerational justice. Kasi wala naman tayong masyadong malaking contribution compared to other generations. But why are we suffering it? So, kaya ina-assert din ng Youth for Climate Hope na dapat yung mga kabataan and other youth networks, yung mga kasama natin dyan sa NCR, yung aming counterpart sina Kuya Jefferson Estela from Youth Strike for Climate Philippines. Isa din sa mga pinupush talaga natin is yung konsepto ng youth inclusivity or youth participation in policy, in creating policies, especially when it talks about our future, no? Kung pinag-uusapan yung climate change, dapat kasama yung kabataan sa mga nagdedesisyon, sa mga desisyon natin para sa ating bansa at para sa ating mundo. At dapat din, siguro na hindi tokenistic yung participation natin. Kasi di ba minsan dapat may youth representative, kaya nilalagyan ng isang upuan yung youth dyan. And then minsan yung ini-invite na youth ay medyo wala ding, hindi rin masyadong well-versed kasi ayaw din nila sa mga kagaya natin na medyo maingay at medyo maraming sinasabi. So that's also a problem, no, parang walang genuine participation. So kaya ina-assert ng Youth for Climate Hope along with our counterparts in different parts of the Philippines na dapat sana may genuine participation yung youth in spaces where decisions about our future are made.
Grabe, Joshua. Sobrang powerful ng mga insights na sinabi mo about your organizations. And syempre yung story on how napirmahan yung executive order and the like. Grabe. That's something na ngayon pa lang namin maririnig sa show na to. Dahil for the past few episodes, we're obviously talking about more on advocacies. And
The project.
ito na yung action. Mm-hmm. And I'm very excited na i-dig deeper pa natin ang mga actions yan later on. Pero we want to ask, kasi very curious kami, paano ka po ba nag-start sa advocacy na to? Ano po yung nag-inspire sa'yo para piliin yung environment? Siyempre, ang dami-dami rin pong causes out there.
Yeah, yun nga, no. Thank you for that. That's I think that's asked 100% of the time to me kung paano ako nagsimula. There's this program that I really owed my environmental activism to. It's called Negros Young Environmentalists Program. So what happened during that program is that we were brought to different cities and municipalities in Negros Occidental to see the best practices of governments and how they protect the environment, how do communities work together to make sustainable development. Yung isang magandang case yung dito sa Negros Occidental, if you've heard of Soyak Island. So that's an ecotourism island na parang yung main attraction is yung mangrove forest. So it's a very nice case study of communities and the environment working together, and how do we actually forward sustainable tourism. So that's for me, that's the uh, parang um, pinakamagandang ano ng example ng sustainable tourism and sustainable development. And then after the Negros Young Environmentalist Program, Environmentalist Summit, um, I signed up to one of the organizations. Yung nangyari during NES, after we were brought to different cities and municipalities, we were parang normal na mga summit, parang pinapagawa kayo ng projects and then you pitch it and then there is a possibility for it to be funded. Then one of my fellow alumnus na yung kabatch ko, one of the fellows to the summit, she pitched about the problem of the Northern Negros Natural Park. It's the natural park. It's a protected area in Negros Occidental that is already diminishing yung forest, and of course it plays a big role in our environment, the watershed, the biodiversity, etc. And then parang I was touched of that project kasi grade 10 pa lang ata ako noon or grade 9. So, medyo wala pa akong alam. So, after noon, I was inspired by her project, and then I asked her if how do I contribute to the campaign. So, that's how I entered. And then after that, first issue, environmental issue that I really parang I would consider na parang fight na talaga or movement is the when I engage in the policy level of the plastic bag regulations ordinance, that also happened to be my first rally kasi nag-rally kami noon to hindi pa nga hindi pa nga directed towards government, but it directed towards the general public to reduce waste and to reduce the consumption of plastic bags. So, long story short, that's my entry point to environmental activism. And also, as we're talking about nonviolent movements, it opened also my eyes na may kaya palang gawin yung mga ganyang klase ng movements. Kasi in a country like us na medyo mahirap or hindi lang mahirap pero medyo delikado yung ginagawa, especially ng mga nag-i-engage sa non-violent movements, no, or mga nagde-display ng kanilang mga demands or political stances or even environmental na mga demands that can be very difficult and at the same time dangerous for activists. Kasi nga, di ba, I think we're ranked 2 na pinakamaraming most dangerous place for environmental activists in the entire world. So I think that's after, parang yung may mga palm oil plantations na country, that's Indonesia. Di ako sure, so don't quote me on that. Pero I think we're top 2 on the most dangerous place to be an environmental activist. So yeah, that's how I started. Just a simple program. So kaya nga minsan sinasabi ko na if I would need to cry and beg for politicians or to government leaders to fund the same program, and if they can make people and young people and students as passionate as us, parang kung kaya ng programa yon na magtanim ng ganong passion sa akin, baka kaya din nun gawin sa iba. And there can be more young people and students who will find their place in the environmental advocacy and find that fire in their heart, no, to start their journey in environmental activism.
Now here's the thing, Joshua. You're 16 when this parang urge ay lumabas. But do you think that your age was an hindrance before, or was there a time na you were doubting to push this advocacy just because you're young?
Yeah, I think that's always a problem for us, no, as young advocates. Whatever advocacy do you have, it is always being invalidated just because of your age, and people think that they know more just because they're older, so
True.
'di ba parang kahit ano yung advocacy natin, may masasabi talaga yung ibang mga tao, especially if they're older than us, na we don't know the world, etc., we don't understand things yet. So I think that's a very malaking problema yon. And siguro another factor din na um na parang hindrance is may gender, kasi bago kasi parang yung iba, kasi for example, for this a privilege of straight cisgendered men and women is that they can just mas madali nilang i-advance muna yung kanilang advocacy, kasi for us we need to prove ourselves first na anong tawag dito, na deserve naming pakinggan, no? Kasi parang ganon. Parang, kasi kung para sa akin, sa mga straight, yung default sa kanila, i-advance na yung kanilang advocacies. For us, we need to prove ourselves first na we deserve to be listened to. So that's another factor, or that's another layer of the problem that I face as a young and queer na environmental activist.
Now, how did you overcome that?
It's for me siguro malaking tulong yung having a very supportive community, no, in your organization, and in your from your mentors as well, yung kanilang validation of the things that you do. It's very very important, kasi palagi kong sinasabi to na in a very long and frustrating fight of environmental justice, you need to get a great company. Kasi pag ikaw lang mag-isa tapos haharapin mong lahat ng problema na to, medyo mahihirapan ka, and you may not be able to sustain yourself. So you would need others to help you sustain and light your fire every time there will be a strong blow of the wind, no, na parang papatay sa ilaw ng or sa apoy ng iyong puso, sa alab ng puso mo.
By the looks of it, we should commend your support system. At
Yeah.
mukhang matibay talaga.
Oo nga. And
I
that's
must
also,
say na magandang environment ang meron kila Joshua.
yes, oo. And dapat natin kino-co-create yan sa lahat ng spaces na mayroong mga youth movements. Kailangan i-create yung isang supportive and understanding community of,
Open.
open community ng mga youth advocates.
Well, speaking of your environment or your community dyan sa Negros, can you share to us who or what are your major influences? Kasi parang gusto rin namin ma-influence.
Mm-mm. We might look for you or for them.
Oo, pumunta kayong Negros, tapos hanapin niyo sila. Hindi, kasi even before, Negros has been parang a home to revolutionaries and change makers. I must say, no, during even on one of the darkest moments of our history, Negresonon have stood up and fought for their rights. So, I must argue na parang nasa dugo na din namin yung paglaban para sa tama at para sa ikinabubuti ng lahat. So from that, maraming mga local na mga activists na parang mga seasoned na talaga. So they have been a great help for us, especially for young advocates. I think Phil know that, kasi marami kaming mga mentors na from the different generation na na we are really learning a lot from, and is also giving us a great source of inspiration. So kasi sabi nga, 'di ba, one of the narratives during the rise to fame of Greta Thunberg. Do you know her?
Yeah,
Yes,
we have
yes.
seen all
We
over
watched,
the news.
discovered her during my 11th or 10th grade, I think.
Very good. Kasi pag hindi niyo kilala, magli-leave studio ko. Isang click lang, oh. Hindi, kasi yung
She was very famous for her statements, and
Yeah.
talagang nandun yung conviction niya at a very young age, which we have to commend.
yeah,
We need more of her.
correct. Na and the statements are very sharp, no, hindi siya nag-sugarcoat, etc. So she's really an inspiration. So personally, she's one of the inspiration that I have. Pero talking local, kasi isa sa mga narratives nung time na yon ni Greta is that um, our elders have failed us or the older generation have failed us. Pero in Negros Occidental, we have a different story kasi our elders or the generation that came before us have fought for 20 years to make this island, to make this province a coal-free province. So actually, the pressure is not on them, but the pressure is on us to continue the fight and actually win the fight. No, so isa din sa mga touching moments was when they thanked us kasi parang we've kind of sealed the 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 fight that they've been fighting for 20 years. For 22 years kasi 1997 pa ata yun nasimula. So more than 24 years na ata if 1997. So, the fight against coal has been very, very long kasi yung mga proponents of coal-fired power plants are also very persistent. So, kailangan ding maging persistent ng mga environmental advocates natin dito sa Negros.
So moving on to another question that I'm very curious about. So ano ba yung since you have mentioned that malaking influence yung mga nauna sa inyo and some sort, what do you all do, ikaw and the rest ng mga kabataan na kasama mo? Ano yung ginagawa nyo to sustain the essence of your community while advancing these initiatives?
Thank you so much for that, no. Siguro for us, babalik ako sa isang namin of building a good community and valuing the people around kasi wala namang movement kung walang tao sa loob ng movement, no. Kung walang mga advocates sa loob, walang mangyayaring movement, walang campaign na maipananalo kung walang mga tao na makikipaglaban para sa campaign na yon. So, sabi nga na it is very important that we take care of each other while resisting kasi ang ginagawa nating trabaho, especially us as young advocates, we don't get paid for this. Wala tayong nakukuha dito, but we're doing it because we're very passionate about it and we love what we do. So it's also, kasi, pero minsan kahit mahal mo yung ginagawa mo, may mga chances pa din na ma-frustrate ka or ano yung tawag dyan, madidrain ka. So it's very important that you have a good support system that will make you, will motivate you and will actually make you go back to your why. Kasi I think that's a very good practice of always going back to your why. Bakit ko ba ginagawa ito? Bakit nga ba ako nagsimula in the first place? So, I think that's a very good practice of making sure that each other feels safe and welcomed in that community. I think that's one of the great practice of sustaining a movement, especially a youth movement.
Well, to our next question, Joshua, we're curious, how can someone from the youth start movements that actually make an impact from the ground? Lalo na yung mga wala pang organization, yung mga ganyan ba?
It's challenging but it's very fun, no, na magsimula ng iyong sariling movement. So sabi nga ng isang billionaire na, but I don't wanna quote him, pero sinabi niya to and I must attribute this to him, choose one thing you're angry about. So yun, kailangan mo lang sigurong magsimula doon, ano ba yung ikinakagalit mo sa mundong ito and then start from that. So ano yung pwede mong gawin? Or siguro for a much better question, what pains you the most? So if you want to start something, maybe you can ask this question. What pains you the most in this society? Does the problem of unending poverty pains you the most? Does the problem of corruption in the government, does the problem of dirty oceans, does the problem of deforestation hurts you the most? Does the problem of poor people suffering from problems they don't even contribute to hurts you or pains you the most? Then you need to start doing something about it.
I must agree doon sa sinabi mo, Joshua. Well, actually, minsan nga nagsa-start mga by questioning the narrative or the status quo. And by asking them kung ano nga ba yung painful for them, ano yung nakakasakit sa kanila, I think doon pa lang nagsa-start na yung yung heart nila to do something about it and to actually contribute something dun sa very much kung saan sila concerned. And
Mhm.
yeah, I think isa rin yan sa mga magandang take para sa ating mga viewers. So next
But
question.
truth be told, partner and Joshua, let's say we are very diverse. Hindi, we are really diverse. Itong kabataan, we're very diverse. Let's say there are students or there are youth like us who are very much involved in activities, in advocacies like this. And there are students and there are ibang kabataan who prefer not to do anything about it or just do gaming, K-dramas, whatsoever. Now here's my two questions for you. First one, do you think it is we should convince them to be involved in this advocacies, in these causes? Yes or no?
Siyempre, yes. It's very
Mm.
important na all of us realize that the things that are happening around us is actually affecting us, no? Kung um siguro it is very important also to call on everyone, especially young people,
Mhm.
to register and vote ngayong darating na election, regardless of who you will, of course, so this is not regardless, kasi in full regard of who you will be voting for, it will really affect your life. So,
Mhm.
it dictates everything about you, kung anong vaccine yung ituturok sa iyo, kung kailan babalik um, yung ating physical classes, kung ano yung mga directives ng ating health sector. It is all being defined by people who we put in power. So, and this 2022, May 2022, we all have the power to choose kung sino
Mhm.
or anong klaseng mga utak yung ilalagay natin sa posisyon. And siguro, I think this is very, very important that young
Mhm.
people should realize that na isa sa pinakamadaling tool na gamitin nila sa pagpili ng kanilang kandidato is their values. No? For example, tanungin mo yung sarili mo, okay ba ako sa ganito? Or agree ba ako sa ganito? So do I agree with violent response to violators? So if yes, then vote people who think reflects your values, no? And then if
Mhm.
no, then vote people for sa mga ganyan din. So that's a very very to check on your values, kung ano ba yung hindi yung kung sinong sikat. Kasi um in in social media, they can always manipulate to make it look that
That
sila yung
information.
sikat or kung sino yung sikat. Yeah, disinformation, etc., ganyan. And if you want to protect the environment, you need to vote for people who protects the environment. So, we cannot
I
repeat
would
the mistakes of voting for voting for people who are either, for example, owner of corporations who continues to rape our environment, or people controlled by these corporations who continues um, to profit from the destruction of our environment. So it's very very important that we vote. It is for me, that is one of your greatest expression of your love to the environment, by voting for the right people and people who really stands up for the environment. Go ahead, Win. Sorry for cutting you.
No, it's fine. I really loved how you answered that. I was really looking forward for you to say yes in that question. Now going to the second, the follow up question. Now how can you convince those um part of the youth na hindi prefer na ma-involve sa mga ganitong klaseng bagay? How will you convince them or um how will you make their hearts burn for the same cause?
Yeah, siguro it's different strokes for different folks. You need to think what that young people or what that certain student values para mas maisip mo kung ano yung tamang sasabihin sa kanya. So for example,
Mhm.
if he values personal development, pwede mong sabihin na by involving yourself to advocacies, you will really develop some skills. Di ba? Tama yon. For example,
Mhm.
hindi ako magiging mas fluent if I didn't involve myself in advocacies. And then I wrote an article about that, na how my activism helped me excel in my studies. Kasi di ba sinasabi nila na mag-aral na lang daw tayo ng mabuti at wag daw tayo makisali sa mga ganito. But in my case, it actually helped me to excel, not only finish my senior high school, but to excel on it. Now, hindi naman sa pagmamayabang, pero on my batch, I ranked first out of 1,081 students. And nagrarally pa yun ha. Charot lang. So, paano pa kaya kung hindi ka So, 100% full-time sa Pero, naniniwala ako na malaki yung contribution ng aking involvement sa advocacy on how did I perform in class and how I landed on my job right now. So, and then another one for people, you might also say na everything, you might think that these things does not affect you, but it does. It really is. It will affect you one way or another. Hindi mo mafe-feel ngayon, mafe-feel mo to bukas, or mafe-feel mo to in some other way na kahit hindi na natin pag-usapan yung environment. Sabi nga natin, find something that hurts you the most. For example, if you want to talk about poverty, you want to talk about hunger, you want to talk about other causes, it is very important that that someone would need to pursue things like what we do right now. And siguro para din sa atin, especially yung mga nasa involved na sa advocacies, is to also, I think or I personally believe na kasama din sa responsibilidad natin na mangmulat ng mga fellow youth na these issues really affect you. Hindi ka makakaiwas dito na ganyan, or kailangan mo talagang makisali sa mga issues na to dahil hindi ka exempted sa magiging effects nito in the future, or this has negative impacts or good impacts on you. And siguro another thing is we really need to respect each other's taya. So kung ano lang yung kaya niyang gawin, no? Hindi na sasabihin natin, ako nga ginagawa ko na to, ginagawa ko pa yan, ginagawa ko pa to, tapos ikaw ganyan lang ginagawa mo. So siguro mas bawasan natin yon kasi kailangan natin ng mas bawasan na environment and respect everyone's taya. So yun, it kasi nga yung kagaya sa akin, yung awakening ko nga is parang good side na nakita ko yung hindi ko pala na-share to, pero one of the things that parang I realized that it was my environmental awakening during NES as when I said na after the tour in the province, I said na this place is really worth fighting for. So, nagka-Ninoy Aquino moment ako, di ba? Sabi ni Ninoy, the Filipino people is worth dying for. So, parang I had the same feeling na it's very beautiful. The island and the environment really sustains the people and it gives them what they need. Yung iba nga nagbibigay pa ng direct na livelihood, especially yung mga trabaho sa mga ecotourism areas. And of course, it gives us healthy food, it gives us every protection, ganyan, and everything we really need. So wala tayong rason para hindi siya ipaglaban.
Wow. Grabe, ang mga insights ni Joshua here, and mention nga niya yung about din sa future, kung ano ba dapat yung mga kapangan natin the future. So, kasi there's this parang major global concern about globalization. Kasi sinasabi nila na meron daw tong adverse effect sa environment. Do you think that globalization is bad for the environment, or is it actually good?
For me, as long as we continue to have systems that exist that is not pro people, it will always be anti-environment when it only serves a few. It is very, very difficult kasi there is really a great chances of exploitation. And when you exploit something, you start to destroy it. So that's my indirect answer.
Okay, and that's where organizations like Joshua's stand. Kasi doon nila check if balance ba dapat ang mga nangyayari in the environment. So, yeah. For our next question, partner.
Yan. So, for the last question before our game, actually, I have to again commend the statement you made earlier na we have this obligation, tayong nai-involve na sa advocacy, we have this obligation na manghikayat. And that's a good mindset. I hope that the viewers Shout out sa mga nanonood ngayon. We'll take that from us. That if may alam tayo or if we are involved, we should, as much as we can, we invite other people so that the cause that we are fighting for will keep going. So here's the last question before the game. Joshua, what does the future look in your eyes?
Well, that's a very good question, no. For that's a, and not only a good question for me, but I think a good exercise that we must all do, no. Imagining what does the future looks like. Saan ba patutungo yung pinaglalaban natin ngayon? So siguro I imagine a future where discrimination does not exist and where people enjoys the gifts of the environment and we only take what we need as human beings and we serve the environment as well, no? Parang mutual yung ating we will have a mutual relationship with Mother Earth where she sustains us and we do our best to sustain her as well and make sure that will um, the next generations will benefit from the benefits that we have that we're also experiencing right now, and the future also looks like for me more equal, um, more fair, um, more humane siguro para sa lahat ng tao, and more friendly to every living things. No, siguro yan din yung ating kailangang i-understand na kasi akala natin there's this um there's this diagram of a triangle where yung tao yung nasa taas at sa ilalim niya yung other species. And that's a very, very wrong understanding of the earth. Kasi sino ba yung nagsabi sa atin na tayo yung pinuno, tayo yung mga hari dito sa earth? But what really is true is we are part of a complex web of life where everyone is connected to everything. Everything is connected to everything else. So we play a part in in sustaining or in destroying this environment. So it is very important that we realize that and we take that into account when we imagine the future that we want for ourselves and for the next generation.
I like that vision. Sobrang hopeful and I hope nga na ganyan ang makita natin in the future in the same vision as Joshua. So Lasa, before we head on to our game, so we have a few questions regarding on your campaign kasi na-mention kanina that yung mga ginawa nyong movements. So our question is, can you please tell us more about the recent campaign, the one that you have won, and the other campaigns that you are currently engaged in?
Yeah, so one of the victories that I have had as a young environmental activist is when were able to successfully lobby the amendment of the plastic bag regulation ordinance in Bacolod City. So that's a victory on the side of the environmentalists in the legislative process. Pero unfortunately, hindi din siya ni-implement. Pero the fight in the policy level proves na meron tayong kakayahan para baguhin yung mga policies na existing but not effective. So secondly is of course yung ating major victory on coal. And then next is siguro yung youth being valued in different consultations. So we've been part in different consultations, especially involving our national situation on climate change. It's at our nationally determined contributions. So we're already being invited on that. So that's also a very good sign of victories of the youth. And I think one of the victories that I think this is we can collectively claim this as youth advocates is that we are making climate change, parang we are slowly making it a daily conversation. Now it is something that should be talked about, and we are mainstreaming this issue. And of course, there's still a lot of things that we can do, and there's still a lot of things, still a lot of work to be done. Pero siguro ito yung isa na kailangan din nating pasalamatan yung mga sarili natin for making climate change a conversation or starting conversations on climate change. And then, so currently, I'm part of the Secretariat of the Negros Environment Watch. It's a coalition of NGOs, people's organizations, youth organizations, looking into different issues of the environment. So recent issues were the issues in the Negros Forest where a road that will traverse the protected area is planned. So, and then another one is the dredging project that is negatively impacting our small and marginal fisher folks in one of the town here in Negros Occidental. And of course, syempre, yun nga, personally, hindi medyo bago sa akin yung campaign on land rights, but since I've been also involved in human rights and that's also one of the lenses and one of the reason why I continue to be part of environmental advocacy. Kasi yung sinasabi nga na hindi naman siguro yung iba na mga environmentalists ay yung pinaglalaban is for really Mother Earth. But for most of us, it's really for people because mawala man tayo sa mundo, Mother Earth will continue to exist. Kasi, but what we are fighting for is a livable future in a livable place for all of us, especially for generations to come. So we're not really fighting for Mother Earth. We're fighting for ourselves. And we are nature defending ourselves. So, yun. And I think, ano pa ba yung, so I'm currently also
Good
involved
perspective today.
ano yan, Win?
Actually, that's a good. Sorry for cutting you off. That's a good perspective to look at because I've been noticing. Oo nga, no? We've been doing this Mother Earth advocacies. I think it was for the Mother Earth. But I just realized that it's at the end of the day, it's for the future of the people that
Yeah,
is
of
going to
human
stay.
race. Yeah, oo nga. Yun, akala natin no, na parang pinaglalaban natin si Mother Earth, but it's actually for the that our race will continue to exist in the future and we not only exist but will live in a humane and livable future. So yun yung pinaglalaban natin and it's part of a larger fight of making this world a better place for everyone.
Partner?
Grabe, partner. All I can say is that kakaiba nga yung perspective na yun. And over the years, makikita mo kasi na some people are saying that hassle naman yan on our part, that will not even benefit us in the future. So it's a good perspective that we instill to them that this is actually for them in the future. So ayun, grabe, kakaiba.
Yung realization then for my part. I've been thinking, oh nga, no? That's very new sa akin yun. And I'll take
Partner,
note of that.
how about we proceed to our game?
Yan. So, Joshua, we have a very, very short game. This is fast talk. You're just going to choose between two options. This is not really about, not related. Let's have a break naman sa ating mga questions. So, are you good? Ready na ba tayo?
Yeah, and I just hope that the questions will come easy, no? Baka tanungin ako mamaya kung blank or chocolates na mahirapan ako sumagot niya.
Okay, here's the first question. Become a billionaire or an advocate?
Advocate.
Cats or dogs?
Neither. Pero better
Guilty
na lang
pleasure.
yung cat. Ano yan? Sorry.
Guilty pleasure.
Pleasure.
Water or soft drinks?
Soft drinks.
What is the most attractive attribute to a person for you?
The heart.
Are you left-handed or right-handed?
Right-handed.
Zodiac sign.
Aries.
Oh, island life or city life?
City.
Anong mas mahirap? Walang tulog o walang kain?
Walang tulog. Mahirap yung walang tulog.
Zombie invasion or zombie outbreak, or alien invasion?
Alien invasion na lang siguro.
Okay. Maging employee o maging estudyante?
I will always choose to be a student if there's a chance.
Maging, no, time travel or transportation as your power?
Um, Parang fun yung time travel.
Okay. Unlimited books or unlimited pass to any movies or series?
Unlimited pass.
Okay. Facebook or Twitter?
Facebook.
Most embarrassing moment during an activity?
Most embarrassing moment, I am very stupid. I think this is my first time saying this in public. Pero, one of my embarrassing, pero hindi siya embarrassing noon, pero ngayon embarrassing na siya. Because I think I was in third year high school, I used a Bible quote to defend my argument in a debate.
Oh,
So, di ba, embarrassing nga siya. And then I was
but,
really proud of that during that time. So, kaya, parang nakakahiya talaga siya maalala.
yeah. So, best part of the day for you?
Best part of the day is morning.
Morning person, si Joshua. Would you want your, okay, sorry, singing or dancing?
Dancing.
Eto, would you want your child to take the same path as you?
I don't want to bring any human being to this earth that is already that is already destroyed, or it will be very difficult for him to live. So I would not have a child. Pero if
You got this one.
yeah. Pero kung
Okay,
pipiliin, syempre, I would always let him, or I will always let them choose what they want to take, but I will always make sure na tama din yung landas na tinatahak nila.
that's nice. Now here's the last message to future Joshua.
Message to future Joshua. I hope that you will still have the passion that you had 3 years ago, especially when you're very young, you're very innocent, and you you did have a really genuine heart for the environment and for the people. I hope you will be able to keep that, and you will not lose track of your vision of a better and more livable future for everyone.
Wow. Now, we're going on with something na prepare naman ng aking partner. Okay, Bianca?
I would like to comment first on the last question. Ano lang, I'm very sure that future Joshua will be proud of the younger Joshua. So ayun, before we head on to our last question, or the $1 million question, we would like to ask if have you ever and have you ever been engaged in scouting when you were in elementary, or if you have any background when it comes to scouting?
I think I did Cub Scout nung grade 3. Tapos, I think, nung, naglaro kami ng kadang, alam niyo yung kadang. Tapos, ako yung parang unang participant na tumakbo kasi yung iba naglalakad lang kasi mahirap. Tapos ako tumatakbo ako gamit ng kadang. And then in grade 5, I participated in Boy Scout as well. I think that's my last, of being a Boy Scout. Pero here, in Negros, I think it is very important to highlight that the Boy Scout, especially the Eagle Scouts, really played a big role in the campaigns for environment. Yeah, oo. Palagi sila naming kasama, and then they really is showing up, especially if there are activities. So, mahal na mahal namin yung mga Boy Scout dito sa Bacolod.
And grabe rin, I know a lot of scouts from Bacolod, from Negros, and very active nga sila when it comes to environmental activities. And I've seen projects on the national level na talagang na-highlight kasi they were doing incredible projects on their community. So ayun, let's head on to our $1 million question. Okay,
Yes,
so
ano na yan?
okay, our $1 million question is, What message can you give to engage scouts to create a better world with SDGs, particularly for climate change?
Thank you so much, no? And indeed, it's $1 million. Mahirap sagutin yung question na yon. Boy Scouts or Scouts have always been doing a great work in terms of environmental advocacy. In fact, they've been pioneers in some areas na wala masyadong discussion or wala masyadong movements on environment protection. They've been doing activities to protect the environment, but I think it is that high time to scale up the things that we do and really raise the alarm on the crisis that we're currently experiencing, especially in the Philippines. We're one of the most vulnerable countries when it comes to climate change, when in fact we have one of the least contributions to the greenhouse gases on the atmosphere. So yung contribution natin is only one third of 1%. So that's 0.30% ng mga greenhouse gases sa atmosphere. Pero if not, first place, second place, or third place tayo sa most vulnerable countries when it comes to impacts of the climate change. So it is very important that scouts all around the Philippines raises the alarm that we are currently experiencing a crisis and do our own personal share of protecting the environment while also calling on our government leaders to take on more radical actions on climate change. Kasi 21 years na tayong more than 20 years na tayong nag-uusap and negotiating on how would government leaders would take this problem, but maybe we're not successful enough kasi siguro kung successful tayo, baka after 3 conversations, tapos na, may solusyon na tayo. And we all have the solutions at hand. It only takes some personal political will and really the values of our leaders. So it is very important that we call on everyone, scouts, normal people, especially government leaders, to pursue climate action and call on climate justice in every day of our lives. Kasi kahit nasa pandemya tayo, hindi nababawasan yung ating mga problema when it comes to the climate crisis. In fact, mas dinadagdagan nito yung problema lalo na ng mga mahihirap and more vulnerable communities and vulnerable sectors. So when we dream of a better future and when we talk about SDG, it is impossible to compartmentalize the conversation of climate change and climate justice. When we want a better world for all of us, it is very important that we put on the table the conversation of climate change and climate action. So siguro yun lang, at sana padayon siguro sa lahat na ginagawa ninyo. Let us continue to inspire each other kasi kailangan natin yung inspiration that we are seeing from each other, either scouts, from civil society ka man na youth or a student leader in your university. We need the inspiration from everyone. We need to continue to inspire each other to have that hope that we will have a better future.
Thank you, Joshua. I was really happy we had this conversation with you.
The feeling is mutual. Yeah, I'm very happy as well to join you and to answer your hard questions, no? And to talk to this demographic as well kasi yung target audience natin are scouts and young people as well. So sabi nga natin, di ba 45 minutes lang yung discussion pero mukhang napasarap tayo. In fact, we haven't covered some of the questions, di ba?
Yes, pero
Worth
yun nga,
it naman.
yes, very worth it. And ang dami rin naming natutunan from you. And I hope ganun din ang mga viewers natin right now. So, of course, before we end our program, meron ka po bang gustong i-share? Gusto ko po bang i-plug for mga future projects na dapat namin abangan?
Yeah, siguro aside from liking our Facebook page, so that's Youth for Climate Hope and Linghod on Facebook. But my only appeal to everyone is to register and vote and make sure that your vote reflects your values and reflect who you are.
Yan, power.
Yes, ayun. So, ayun nga. I think this is where we will end our program na, partner, no? So thank you very
Yes.
much po, Joshua, for accepting our invitation. Ang dami namin tutunan from your environmental advocacies and yung mga pwede ba namin gawin kahit na we're still underage. So, ayun, indeed, this is a huge help in keeping our scouting spirit alive amidst this pandemic. So, go, partner.
So, yan, before we actually end, meron na tayong few reminders. The first one is, open pa rin po ang aming merchandise. You can see it up here. Yan. And you can support us by sending stars, yan, and availing our merch. Yung po makukuha namin doon will be used para sa aming future projects along with the support sa ating mga nag-host and sa mga patuloy na sumusuporta sa AMAPS. And of course, we also have the registration. Yan, for interested applicants or maging miyembro ng AMAPS. So that would be all. So this has been Eagle Scout, Windsharm M5, and I'm with...
And I'm Bianca Mielpedes, and this is Scouts for Sustainability. Thank you so much. Bye!